Big Ten Huddle. I'm your host, JR, and today I have a couple of awesome guests with me. I have Zack from Big Ten Football Talk Podcast, and I have Russ from the Boiler Express Podcast here at Big Banter Sports. Before we get into it, I'm going to let these guys talk a little bit about their podcast and where you can find them. Zack, you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah. My name is Zack Guggenheim. I am with the Big Ten Football Talk podcast, which is really, it's a fun hobby for me to talk all things Big Ten football, anything from the games to breaking news suspensions like Jim Harbaugh, which I'm sure we're going to talk about a little bit today. But I just love talking ball. So I'm excited to be on. Thanks for having me.
For sure. And if you don't know, Zack is an Ohio State fan, so he'll be repping the Buckeyes for us today, giving you Buckeye takes, which I know everybody in the Big Ten just loves to hear. So we'll love hearing that from you, Zack. Thanks so much for being on. And then we have Russ from the Boiler Express podcast. You want to talk a little bit about that, Russ?
Sure. I'm Russ Johnson. I'm on the Boiler Express podcast. You can find us at Boiler_Express on X and Instagram. And then if you just look up Boiler Express podcast on YouTube, Facebook, all the places you get your podcast, you'll be able to find us that way. We're obviously a Purdue-centered podcast. We cover mainly football and men's basketball, but we touch on other sports as well, just kind of everything Purdue, and then also touch on some national things as well. So, yeah.
For sure. And the Boulder Express, it's a party over there. They got like 5 or 6 people sometimes. So
it's a full room. Yeah.
It is. I enjoy listening to them, and I love the banter. And you guys get off topic, but it's entertaining listening to you all. So
oh, yeah.
I highly endorse both these podcasts, and I hope you go give them a listen. So, well, like I said, me and Russ, we are under the Big Banter Sports umbrella. You can find us at bigbantersports.com. We have a podcast for every team for football, and then we're working on teams for basketball as well. Not quite there fully yet, but we are getting those together and should have them done by basketball season. If you like this podcast, the Big Ten Huddle, go ahead and like and subscribe. We have episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, even Labor Day tomorrow. We have an episode for you because we are just so committed to Big Ten football in week one. Well, today we were talking all through week one. We will hit on every single game. We might not spend the same amount of time on every game, but we will try to hit on every single game and give you our analysis, our thoughts on the game, what happened around the game, all of that good stuff. So it's only right to start with West Virginia at Penn State, the primetime game on NBC, the whiteout. It was huge. It was spectacular. Drew Aller had a great game. The Penn State defense, maybe a little bit less than advertised. We don't know. Maybe that D-line was struggling a little bit, but West Virginia, hats off to them. Their O-line played well, and it was an interesting game. Zack, what was your kind of take on this game?
Well, I think you hit the main takeaway, which is Drew Aller, I think, may have announced himself as the best quarterback in the conference. I mean, he was spectacular. And I know it's West Virginia is not, they're not Bama, they're not Georgia, they're not Michigan or Ohio State, but he maneuvered the pocket well. He showed good athleticism. His arm talent, undeniable. I think on the flip side, you also nailed it. I think the defense, their back for that secondary, I think, is good, although they had a bust early in that game. But they are light up front, and that has been my concern going into the season, especially against teams like Michigan. And I think it showed against a not very good West Virginia team.
Yeah, it was very interesting to watch. And, of course, nobody played a Bama or Ohio State or anything this week. I guess Indiana did, but yeah. But it was still interesting to watch. Russ, what was your take on this game?
Yeah, so I'm happy we don't have to travel to Happy Valley this year. We obviously played them at home last year, and it was a heartbreaking loss for us. And like you said, Drew Aller was amazing. 21 of 29, over 300 yards. I was a little surprised that Katron Allen didn't perform a little bit better. Singleton actually led him in rushing with 71 yards. But you don't need to run the ball well when you pass the ball that well. So, it was definitely impressive offensive performance, but the defense definitely left some questions. Yeah.
For sure. And I was watching this game a little bit, tweeting a little bit about it during it. And I asked the question at one point, is Penn State feeling a little, upset about this game? Obviously they're winning, that was fine, but kind of similar to Ohio State and Indiana. And we'll get into that later. But, they didn't strike dominance out there. Yes, the passing game was really good, but even defense, I mean, they played well. Like I said, it's not like they were bad, but they just didn't dominate, kind of like you would hope that a top 10 team would with a team that's getting ready to fire their coach here soon. And it was striking to me. I mean, you tell me, Zach, if you're a Penn State fan, you feel good, you feel bad, you feel kind of like, first game of the season. How are you feeling today if you're a Penn State fan?
That's a good question. I actually had a Penn State fan that I was watching the game with, and I think they felt they felt mixed. And I think I would too, because I think probably the biggest check mark is that Drew Aller is as advertised. But I think the defense, and I think even that running game, you mentioning Allen and Singleton, they were okay, but they're advertised as one of the top 5 backfields in the country. And so I think I think that the Ohio State Indiana comparison is actually probably pretty appropriate, because they probably expected, and I expected probably like a 50 to 17 type of win, 55, 52, 17 win. Instead, it was it was 31-15 without a junk score in the last couple minutes. So maybe uneasy, maybe curious, definitely mixed.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't see a single Big Ten team score over 40 points this week. And I don't know, you can attribute that to the first down rules. You can attribute that to, teams just run the ball more. I have no idea. But, we definitely didn't get some of the high-powered offense out of some of the teams. Not every team in the Big Ten is a high-powered offense, but we didn't get that out of some of the teams like maybe we thought we would. I mean, Russ, you give me your take on kind of the first down and how it affected games. Do you think that's kind of why we had some of these lower scoring blowouts, or do you think it just the Big Ten offenses aren't as good as maybe we thought?
Yeah, it's definitely affecting the game a little bit. Coach Walters at Purdue particularly pointed out that it's going to lower the play count by about 8 to 10 plays, which adds up to about a drive. But I think it can be attributed more to the fact that there's so many new faces and new places, new offensive coordinators. We previewed our, every matchup we have for Purdue this year. And I think 6 of the first 8 matchups was a transfer quarterback that didn't really have much experience. So I think that's what it can maybe be attributed more than anything. A lot of these teams we had completely new faces all across the board. We're replacing, their starting quarterback, top receiver, top tight end, their running back room. And I think we just found out a lot about these teams and kind of how they're going to distribute the ball, what the hierarchy is in their backfields, that kind of thing. And I think that's what probably limited the offenses a little bit, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a great point. And the transferring and the first down rule, that's a great point. All right, well, thanks for your thought on that, guys. We're going to move on to East Carolina at Michigan. And, maybe the game here doesn't have a whole lot to talk about, but, we have to talk about the four Harbaugh, free Harbaugh. Of course, and I try not to do this. I try not to let my Ohio State come out too much because I do want to be fair. I do want to be objective, but I feel a little bit justified because I saw fan bases from all over the place kind of making fun of it. Russ, I won't say too much. What's your take on the whole free Harbaugh and everything?
It's almost turning into reality TV in the Big Ten, where what's the next thing that they're going to do that's just going to make you shake your head? They're definitely coming off as very full themselves, playing the victim. And we're already on their side at the beginning because we're kind of all frustrated with the NCAA and some of their rules and the way that they are inconsistent. But Michigan's taken it so far that they're making it easy to still not like them. It's just interesting for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Zack, our resident, you let your Ohio State fandom show here, and I guess rip him for a minute if you want to. What's your thoughts on this?
Well, it's ironic because when Harbaugh first got suspended by the NCAA, I felt sad for him and for Michigan because I'm like, the NCAA is ridiculous. This removes all of that. It's just like, come on, guys, like let's have some self-awareness here. Like because you don't want the NCAA to come down hard on you, you self-imposed this 3-game suspension like you did, not the Big Ten, not the NCAA, you. And so now you're gonna, I mean, and I think Russ, here's talking before the show, like it's not like Jim's not there for most of everything else. Like he's there except for game day. And I just, it boggles my mind. Like I think it made way more sense for like Northwestern to be upset, like the Northwestern players to be upset about what is going on there. This feels like Michigan trying to channel that into something that is just completely inappropriate and unfounded. It's ridiculous.
Right, and even though Northwestern did technically fire Pat Fitzgerald themselves, I think you could say that like there was pressure from outside, outside
Right.
schools and sources for that to happen. I don't know anybody that was pressuring Michigan like you better suspend Jim Harbaugh. He deserves it. Like I
Well,
don't
it's
know.
over
I
a
mean,
cheeseburger, right?
yeah.
Like
Well,
what is
and
this?
lying about a cheeseburger is what the NCAA said, which I don't know. I also have to think about it. They are college students, and they care about their coach and all that,
Yep.
and so I feel for them, but yeah, it's kind of a circus. And as an Ohio State fan, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, like, guys, are you sure this is really the team you want running the Big Ten? Like, weren't things a little bit better with Ohio State a couple years ago? But I digress. It's nice to see parity in the conference, even though I don't like it happening with Michigan. It's nice to see parity, and it's more competitive. So, all right, well, moving on from there. This isn't Russ's favorite topic, but we'll let Zach go first, so Russ can think about it a little bit more. I'm sure he's already thought about it enough, but. Purdue goes down 39-35 to Fresno State. It was at Purdue. I wouldn't say that Purdue played bad, but I also wouldn't say that they were exceptional. I don't know. Zach, what were kind of your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, well, when on my picks pod before this slate of games, I actually picked Fresno State to upset Purdue, and part of the reason why, a lot of it was just the uncertainty of Purdue, but also Fresno State was ranked, I think, 24th at the end of last year. And so this is not a gimme group of 5 game. And in fact, I think it might be their toughest non-conference game. And they get Syracuse and Virginia Tech. And I think Florida State or Fresno State might be better than both. Mikey Keene came over from UCF. I thought he had a good game. I made one brutal mistake in the fourth quarter, but in general, I don't think Purdue fans should look at this Fresno State loss and think, oh, we got beat by a group of 5 team. I think you got beat by a good team. Even though they had lost some pieces coming back, I think it was a good team. And so I think where you're probably frustrated is you had this game. Like you had it 2 minutes left. You have a game, supposedly game-winning touchdown. Hudson Card, I thought, he had really good moments. Maccabee had really good moments. But I think, we saw at the end, the defense, they lost Corey Trice. They lost a few others in that defense. And I think you're seeing the losses for them against, I think, a pretty good Fresno State team.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I think Fresno State's a better team than people are going to give them credit for. Russ, our resident Purdue fan, tell us what's your thoughts here?
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything you guys have said so far. We'll talk about it more on our pod Tuesday night. That, I think the message is going to be telling Purdue fans to calm down. Like it's okay. You don't need to be angry. It is frustrating that we, snatched defeat from the jaws of victory, but especially after the way we started last season. It's the same way we started last season. I told you guys before we came on, I'm not going to a home opener again because I can't do a third straight heartbreaking loss at the end to start our season. But yeah, Fresno State won their conference last year. Mountain West Conference is no, slouch of a conference. They put teams in the BCS bowls before. Fresno State has, I think, 4 of the last 5 full seasons played, 10 or more wins. So it's a good program. They've put guys in the NFL, and they brought over Mikey Keene, like you said, from UCF. That he was the real deal. He played really well. Their slants just ate us up. We're learning a new defense, and everybody's giving Walters a hard time because he's the defensive coach. We scored 35 points and we lost with a defensive head coach, but it's a whole new scheme, putting guys in new places. And I think the most impressive guy on our defense was a freshman, true freshman, Dylan Thieneman. Had led our team in tackles with 10 tackles, had the lone interception. And if there was a disappointing part of our defense, it was probably just not playing the right coverages underneath and just getting kind of diced up on the slants. But yeah, you can't really be upset as a Purdue fan. You've got to feel like we're still trajecting upwards. Hudson Card, I'd like to see him use his legs a little bit more. There's a few times I feel like he could have tucked and got 5 or 6 yards instead of just throwing out of bounds or throwing an incomplete pass. But he didn't turn the ball over. And then our run game, running up the middle, we just could not pick up a yard up the middle of the field. I don't know what it was. We obviously missed Gus Hartwig, and then our second string center was actually out as well. So we're starting a third string guy as center. So that's definitely going to hurt your up the field running. So a lot of the fans were questioning, bounce it outside sooner. And then we finally started doing it with Mockman in the second half, but it was just not enough. So, but yeah. I think it's good. Like you guys said, there might be 5 or 6 teams on our schedule this year that are an easier game, quote unquote, than what Fresno State is. So don't feel like this is the sky falling and we're going to be 2-11 or 2-10. Yeah.
There's definitely teams in the Big Ten on your schedule that are easier than Fresno State, not just Virginia Tech and Syracuse. So you're right about that. I was most encouraged. If I was a Purdue fan, I guess I'm not, but I don't know. I just like Big Ten football. So when they're facing out of conference, I root for them. But if I was a Purdue fan, I'd be most encouraged by Deion Burks. I mean, 150 yards. It was only 4 catches, but 2 touchdowns. It just seems like Purdue every single year, even with a new coach, they are just going to find this wide receiver that maybe nobody's really heard about. I mean, Rondell Moore, they knew about him and stuff like that. But like Charlie Jones last year, he was at Iowa. He was a good transfer, but nobody really heard about him. I mean, I do feel like Purdue fans have some things to be happy about here, and they just need to remind themselves that it was Fresno State. Fresno State would probably finish, 4th or 5th, if not higher, in the Big Ten West. And the race is still there for the Big Ten West. You can still compete for the Big Ten West this year. That's kind of one of the nice things about losing these out-of-conference games. So, all right, well, we said a lot of nice things about Purdue. We can move on to the Buckeyes at Indiana, and we can say all of our mean things about Kyle McCord and the offensive line, and I'm sure Buckeye fans will be sitting there saying, "You're right, we stink. This is terrible." So since I let Zach go first about Purdue, Russ, I'll let you go first about Ohio State at Indiana. Of course, Ohio State won 23-3. But what are your thoughts here, Russ?
Well, I appreciate you putting the IU loss right after the Purdue game, so it can help me kind of lick my wounds a little bit and feel good about that. But yeah, obviously. IU's defense seemed to show a little bit better, but that might have been also partly Kyle McCord just kind of getting his feet under him. Definitely wasn't the 56-10 blowout we were expecting. But I don't think Ohio State fans should be too upset because there's a lot of great Ohio State quarterbacks that did not do great in their first start. So you could be upset that there wasn't a higher scoring output. He didn't throw more touchdowns, but I don't think that Ohio State fans should treat the sky like it's fallen either, just like Purdue fans. So, yeah.
And the good news is they have another 2 games to figure it out before Notre Dame and go through that process. So, Zach, you're a resident Ohio State fan. How you feeling after the game? You think good, bad, otherwise? You got to be encouraged by that defense. What are you thinking?
Well, I'll be honest. The first thing I thought is, when did Jim Tressel become our coach again?
Yeah.
Because I was like, man, this is like slogging it out, 3 yards in a cloud of dust, punt's the most important play of football. I love Tress, by the way. He's awesome. But I think I'm actually not as concerned about the personnel as I am maybe some of the coaching decisions. So I thought McCord had really good moments. I thought, at the offensive line, they need time to gel. I'm not super concerned yet about the offensive line. I thought the defense played well. I think where I'm concerned is how Ryan Day said he was going to handle the quarterback situation. He said both quarterbacks are going to play and you don't want to yank any of them early because of a problem. Well, McCord played for most of the game, and the only time he yanked him was when he threw a pick. And I'm like, it felt, and this has been my concern with Ryan Day, is I think when you get angry Ryan Day and he lets it loose, he's the best coach in the country, or at least one of the top 5. But he gets tight, man. And You can't let Ibuka and Harrison have 5 catches combined for 34 yards. You just can't. And I don't care if they triple teamed Marv. Now I know he had the potential touchdown taken away, but I just I'm wondering what's going on in terms of their offensive game plan and why Ryan Day tends. It's almost like he turtles, and it's. I think that's my bigger concern because it's been a 3 or 4 year trend now. So that's where I'm most concerned. I'm not concerned about the players. I think McCord's going to be fine. I think Marv is Marv, Emeka is Emeka. Like defense, I think is going to be better. I'm more concerned about that. Um, and I think Indiana still has a lot of question marks. If I'm a Hoosier fan, I'm like, what did I just watch? At least from an offensive perspective. Defense, I'm at least a little encouraged. 44, I don't forget his name, but 44 was wrecking Ohio State yesterday.
Yeah, that's kind of been the Tom Allen way, defense, 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 and if we can get the offense together, then it'll be nice. And when you had Michael Penix in 2020, it was really nice. But yeah, it's interesting to say the least. And we're not going to spend too much time on Ohio State. I will have an Ohio State insider from 24/7 Sports, Jay Book, if you know him. He will be on the podcast on Tuesday to talk about the Ohio State QB situation. So if you want to hear more Ohio State, we'll talk about that more then. But yeah, IU, I think they have a good defense, and if they can figure out this offense situation, we're going to be looking at some wins that might have been unexpected this year for IU. And of course, we'll have our Purdue IU battle at the end of the season, which everyone will tune into. So I always watch it every year. I think it's a great game, and I love watching it. So. All right, moving on from there, let's get to the game from today. If you don't know, we record this on Sunday night, but the game from today, Northwestern and Rutgers. Northwestern at Rutgers. We had the QB battle for the ages, Gavin Wimsatt and Ben Bryant, both with Ben Bryant had about 169 yards. Gavin Wimsatt had 163. Gavin Wimsatt, 1 touchdown. Ben Bryant, 2 picks. This is a game I haven't had a whole lot of time to look at. I've been looking at mostly stats, a little bit of the game. Zach, what was your kind of feeling on this game?
I think my first thought is Northwestern is going to have a rough year. And I think we all knew that coming into the season, but I think it just confirmed it. I mean, the fact that they had 7 points, I don't think that does it justice. I think it was the last few minutes of the game. Like Rutgers, I think had backups in. I love Schiano, and I think he's a good coach, and he's like the best coach for Rutgers. And maybe this is sad that I want this. I really want Rutgers to do well. I grew up in New Jersey, so that's probably part of the reason why. But I'm encouraged. They're always going to struggle offensively. Monungai is a great weapon. Wimsatt, I really love his potential. I mean, he hasn't shown much, but he hasn't had a lot of time. His time was cut short last year. And I would love to see them progress and at least be a competitor with some of the more average teams, see them get up to like a Maryland level. I don't know if that's this year, but I'm at least encouraged by the continued trajectory that Schiano has them at.
Yeah, I think Schiano's the guy for a job. He had him up there at one point when they were before the Big Ten, and ever since joining, it's just not been the same. Russ, kind of what are your thoughts on this Northwestern Rutgers game?
Yeah, so this is the first East versus West battle in the Big Ten, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's an example of the disparity, right? Rutgers is maybe, you mentioned Maryland not being at their level. They're best maybe 5th, maybe 6th in the East. So, and Northwestern's obviously the bottom feeder that they might go the whole year without winning a game.
Mm-hmm.
And Rutgers, I kind of like you. Rutgers is a team that they've got to think, what if we were in the West? What if we didn't have to play, Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan? We could maybe have a better shot at a bowl game. But, they got lucky with the schedule. They got to open with Northwestern. And they should have had a shutout. It should have been their first shutout since joining the Big Ten. If Sullivan didn't come in at the end there and lead them to a touchdown with like 20 seconds left, they got a pretty dominant looking score there. But 24/7 just makes it look like, well, Rutgers is going to be right there at 5th or 6th again. But what could be if they were in the West,
Right.
So
And I think you have a defense to build on with Rutgers. I mean, Aaron Lewis is there, and Max Melton. I've been high on Max Melton most of the offseason. I really like his game and feel like he is a good corner, does a good job with his hands. And so I'm encouraged, at least by the defense. And if Gavin Wimsatt can keep on this, kind of upward trajectory, we could be looking at a better season for Rutgers than people might have thought, which, I'm not saying will be ecstatic, anything amazing, 3 or 4 wins instead of 2. Which, I'm not saying is bad because that's getting better. So,
Yeah.
all right, moving on to our next game, Nebraska at Minnesota. This game was on Thursday, so you've probably heard it a little bit, so we won't spend too much time on it. We got the Illinois-Toledo game to do after this, but, just, I guess, after some of the media, maybe thinking after it for a while, Russ, kind of what's your thoughts on the Big Ten West foes, Nebraska at Minnesota?
Well, I was waiting to see when I could kind of insert this comment, but one thing I think Purdue fans can take away from looking at some of these other battles between West teams or their non-conference games is that Hudson Card might be the best quarterback in the West. Nobody really impressed. Now, Wisconsin kind of went all run game, so we don't really know what Mordecai might be able to do in Luke Fickell's system. But that game made me think, okay, Purdue's got a shot. It's one of those games that's like, okay, the West is still wide open. Nobody's really dominant on offense. If we can figure out how to get to 20 points against some of these teams, we could get some W's in the West. So,
yeah, I mean, the West is good defenses, but you're right. The quarterback play is just not – I'm going to say it's not good. It's just nobody really stands out, kind of like you said. And I really do like Hudson Card. I think Graham Harrell with Hudson Card could be a really good connection. I'm on this Big Ten matchup, Big Ten West matchup. What are your thoughts there, Zach?
Yeah, I think for Minnesota, I think Kaliak Manis has really good upside. But, I mean, I thought he would have progressed further up to this point. But it's only year 2 for him. And really not even year 2 because he didn't get a full year last year. They miss John Michael Schmitz so much. Way more than I thought they would. I mean, their offensive line, they could not run the ball. And I think Nebraska's defense is I don't know what to think about Nebraska's defense because of all the moving parts, and I didn't think they were going to be that good going into the game. So I think Nebraska fans were excited about the defense, and I'm like, I don't know if that was good defense as much as it was bad offense. If I'm Nebraska, I think there's a temptation to be like, here we go again, for obvious reasons. The thing I would just say is remember that culture takes a long time to change, and Scott Frost just decimated that culture. And so just because Matt Rule comes in, people were upset about some of the play calling at the end. That game changed on a fumble and a face mask, and I'm like, that's where the game changed. So should he have stopped passing the ball? Sure. But those are the same mistakes they made the past few years. And it's going to take a good year for them to get that out of their system, I think. And I think Rule's the guy to do it. He's done it everywhere else he's gone, at least in the college level. But I would just encourage Nebraska fans, don't go down the gutter of, oh, he's just like Frost. Understand that this is still something that's got to get worked out. And I think Rule will. I think I think he can get a couple wins. I just don't, it's going to take time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think your concern if you're in Nebraska is not Matt Rule, it's Satterfield, the offensive coordinator.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I get the play calling stuff, but at the same time, I'm not one person who really harps on play calling because there's just so much in meetings and the list of plays that you can use and everything else that it's like, you can't call a play that you didn't practice all week or anything. So I don't know. I don't harp on play calling as much, but I can understand why, Nebraska fans would have been upset with it. But, Jeff Sims, he's your playmaker. You found a playmaker on offense to do some things, led the team 114 yards passing, 91 yards rushing. I mean, he's a playmaker. He's going to do some great things. He's also going to make some mistakes, 3 interceptions. But if you ask me, it's been better than some of the quarterbacks they've had recently. I'm not saying Casey Thompson was bad, but he wasn't exactly the playmaker that Jeff Sims is. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I agree. Definitely not Scott Frost repeat. I think that this team is better and culture is changing. You can see that. So, all right, moving on to Toledo at Illinois. This was a game 30-28. Illinois won with, I think, like 3 seconds left on the clock as they kicked the field goal. I think this kind of surprised some people. I know the Illinois pod on Big Banter was talking about how they, I don't know if they would say they expect to win the West, but they are confident in their abilities to win the West this year. They're really confident in that D-line, but I just didn't see the dominance that you'd want to see against a MAC school. Russ, you're our Big Ten West guy here, and I don't know if your thoughts will be good or bad about Illinois, but give me your thoughts.
Well, for those that aren't familiar with Purdue and Illinois, it actually is a trophy game. It's a rivalry game. So it's not maybe one of the well-known ones, but, we love to kind of hate Illinois. And then we stole their defensive coordinator after they, had the defensive coordinator of the year last year. So we kind of got a shot in on them there. And that's going to be a big game for us when we host them because we're dedicating Tiller Tunnel, and it'll be Walters versus his, mentor and Brett Bielema. But Illinois, survived, like you said, at the end there, and they were down 19-7 at one point too. So it really was looking bleak. If I'm honest, I know that Zack's got some nice things to say about Toledo and the MAC, but I'd say Fresno State's going to beat Toledo by 2 touchdowns. I think that like you said, it wasn't expected to be close because Toledo is from the MAC, and the Big Ten historically, beats up on the MAC. Michigan State had their MAC matchup and kind of handled them, and Michigan State's not exactly a powerhouse right now in the Big Ten. So, Illinois is another team that they're kind of figuring things out with a new defensive coordinator, with Walters being gone. And if it wasn't for a pick six from their defense, kind of saving them after giving up 28 points to Toledo, they don't escape with that W either. So.
Yeah, I agree, and I think you saw some of the effects of losing Chase Brown as well.
Mm-hmm.
You can be confident about your defensive line and the defense and what you have there. And Luke Altmaier, he's exciting. I think Luke Altmaier, he has talent. He didn't really display it a ton, but I think we saw kind of the effect of losing Chase Brown and how much he meant to that offense last year. Zach, what's your take on this game?
Yeah, well, it's funny. I thought this might be the best game of the weekend because I think you might be right. Fresno State's probably a little better, maybe a couple touchdowns better than Toledo, but I was really concerned about just the loss, all the losses on defense for Illinois, because they lost 3 out of 4 of that secondary, and they were all high draft picks. I mean, Sidney Brown, and I'm trying to remember the corner that went 5 overall. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but I mean, they lost real talent in the back end. You got a new quarterback, you have new running backs. McCray and Love have been there for a while, but so I was really concerned, especially with Finn as a playmaker for Toledo. So I wasn't surprised by the score. I thought Altmaier showed some things where he, I think Hudson Card easily right now, you could say, is the best quarterback in the West. Curious about Mordecai, but I think Altmaier, he might be an up-and-comer in that conversation by the end of the season. I thought he showed good athleticism, good throws. One game, so take that with a grain of salt. But I don't think people should be surprised by Toledo just because it's game 1. But I am curious to see where does Illinois go with this, because I think they're just a big question mark to me. I think they could be 7-5, 8-4. I think they could not make a bowl. It's just, I don't know, with everything that they've lost and the defensive coordinator, there's just a lot there that I'm just not sure about.
Hey, I'm here for it if we have a top 3 quarterback matchup in the Big Ten West between Illinois and Purdue. I don't know the last time we've seen that happen, but, Purdue, they're known for their quarterbacks. I don't know if Illinois quite has the same reputation, but I'm here for it. The quarterback battle of Purdue and Illinois for, I don't know what the trophy's called. What's the trophy called, Russ? Do you know?
It's the Purdue Cannon.
The Purdue Cannon. Yeah, there you
it's
go.
It's like a little 2-foot, 3-foot long mini cannon.
Yeah. There's so many fun trophies in the Big Ten. I forget some of them sometimes. I love the chair this weekend from Nebraska and Minnesota though. All right, moving on. Thanks for your thoughts on that one, guys. We are going to get into just kind of your thoughts overall. These were some smaller games, but Michigan State versus Central Michigan, Utah State, Iowa. Iowa scored on their very first drive, and I don't know how long it was. I know Brian Ferentz was over on the sideline probably ecstatic about saving his job and stuff. You know, they need the 25 points per game, and Cade McNamara looked good. Not amazing, but he was good, and I think that's what you need for an Iowa quarterback. Zach, give me your thoughts on Utah State, Iowa, or Central Michigan, Michigan State, whichever one you want to go with. Kind of what are your thoughts here?
I think with Iowa, are we sure that Brian Ferentz didn't score 2 touchdowns and say, "Oh, that's good offense. We're good. We're done. We're just shutting it down." Because that's what it felt like. I saw it was 14-0. I tweeted even, it's like, give Brian Ferentz an extension, and knowing that was the worst thing to say to an Iowa fan. And then they didn't score at all the rest of the game. I mean, it's 24, but I was just like, what the heck? Keep going. Go. So that's my thought. I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I agree. It's like, oh, he was like, oh, we got there. I think the biggest news, though, Phil Parker did not hold up his end of the deal. I mean, they didn't get a defensive touchdown. So I'm sure Brian Ferentz is looking at him like, dude, I count on you for at least one defensive touchdown a game. Come on. Give me a break here. So, Russ, you know the Big Ten West, Iowa, I guess Michigan State, too, if you want to comment on them. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, y'all said it. It's like they're due a, slug it out, low scoring win at the beginning of the year that makes you think, do they know how to run offense? Do they know you're supposed to score on offense? And so they jumped out so early. It's like, wait, slow down. We're not supposed to do this at this point in the season. Like, everybody calm down. So, yeah, I mean, I wasn't surprised really by that. Michigan State, Central Michigan. It's another one of those games where it was a sluggish start, right? It was like 10-7 at halftime, and it literally was about to be 3-0 at halftime, and they both scored in like the last 2 minutes or whatever. Yeah. And then Michigan State obviously kind of got some more breathing room in the second half, but Michigan State, I think they'll struggle to make a bowl game this year too, if I'm gonna be honest. But
yeah.
I was living for the Michigan State fans on Twitter that were, talking some crap to Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State, saying, who covered this weekend? Who covered? It's like, okay, yes, you covered against Central Michigan. Congrats. But, hey, to their credit, they covered, and none of the big three in the Big Ten East did cover. So, hats off to them. Two more kind of nothing. I wouldn't say they're nothing games, but I don't know how much you can learn in some of these games. Wisconsin, I guess, was close with Buffalo for the first half. I'm trying to check this here. So 14-10 at halftime, but then Wisconsin, they pulled away toward the end there. You got Russ, you have any thoughts on Wisconsin versus Buffalo or Maryland versus Towson?
Yeah, so Wisconsin, they had 150 yards rushing in that third quarter. That's what helped them pull away. So, it's kind of like, when Walters came to Purdue and everybody's like, oh my gosh, are we going to run offense? We hired a defensive coach. They know what Purdue is. When you hire an air raid coach like Fickle going up there to Wisconsin, everybody's like, are we going to run the ball? We're going to run the ball. And he's like, oh yeah, watch this. We'll do 300 plus yards rushing as a team. How about that? And 150 in one quarter. So, that obviously makes Purdue fans a little nervous because every time Wisconsin plays Purdue, we haven't won since the Tiller era, and they always seem to have a guy that goes off for 250 yards rushing against us. So it looks like we might be in for more of the same this year.
Yeah, that's a good point. I was shocked when I looked at the box score, and Ches, I'm probably going to say his last name wrong, but Malusi, he had more rushing yards than Braylon Allen in this game, which, Braylon Allen still got the workload, but still, I think strong rushing game, and looks like Phil Longo will fit into the Big Ten West just fine. We won't have to worry too much about that. Zach, your thoughts on Wisconsin, Buffalo, or Maryland, Towson?
I was really high on the Tanner Mordecai transfer, and I'm still high, but I'm not as bullish as I was preseason. He didn't have a great game, and part of it they really did center on the running game, try to establish the run. But he didn't play well, like super well. Like he threw a pick, and some of that might have been play design. But I would agree with Russ that I think before week 1, I actually had Tanner Mordecai as my top quarterback in the West. I think that's flipped to Hudson Card. I really do. I'm still excited to see how Phil Longo brings in some of that air raid stuff, though, as the season goes along. And they'll need to with a lot of some more high profile games down the road. And then Maryland, I didn't even tune in because it was Towson.
Yeah. Yeah, I will say Tulia Tagovailoa had a good game. Again, it was Towson, but there's credit for going out and doing what you're supposed to do, because not everybody can always do that. Not everybody, and I should say can't always do that. Not everybody always does do that. So credit to them for that. These Monday morning episodes, they're going to be a little bit longer. Normally we try to be 20 to 30 minutes. Obviously this one got up near 40. So if you were hoping for a shorter episode, sorry about that. But I think it's important we go through the games and kind of comment on each one and see what we think. So special thanks to Russ for coming on today. Appreciate that. Thanks to you, Zack. A reminder that Russ is from the Boiler Express podcast. Zack is from Big Ten Football Talk. You can find those on social media, podcasts. Are you on podcast platforms, Russ?
Yes, yeah, we're on all the platforms. We got an
Okay.
RSS feed that goes out to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the good ones. Yep.
Okay, awesome. And that's what you primarily run on too, right, Zack?
Yep. Apple, Google, Spotify. Yep. And social media as well.
There you go. Awesome. And I'll put some links in the description so you guys can find those there as well. So don't forget, Big Banter Sports. Go to the website, follow social media. You can find the Big Ten Huddle on Twitter or X, whatever we're calling it, Instagram, all those different good places. So anyway, thanks so much for coming on, guys. Appreciate you. We will have J-Book on to talk through some of the Ohio State QB battle and other Big Ten stuff next episode on Tuesday morning. Have a great day.